Okay, we're talking about very, very common bullets, very common weapons in the United States. And these are the same kind of weapons that have been used in what we call active shooter scenarios, meaning that a guy comes into a populated area, typically inside of a building, and starts shooting people. Okay, so this has happened in schools, it's happened in businesses, it's happened in buses and trains and these kind of urban environments where there are a lot of people. It happens in places where there's lots of rules about guns, and it happens in places where there are very few rules about guns. So it's not something that has to do with controlling weapons. What it has to do with is having knowledge and having an understanding of how these tools work and how these projectiles function inside of different kinds of medium. So that's part of what we're talking about today. My premise is that certainly inside of a school there are a lot of textbooks, and textbooks offer some amount of protection, some amount of reduction of damage, if you will, to the potential victims. So it's something that we need to consider. We said over here, I just want to give another view of what we were talking about. These books were shot with two very common pistols. One of them was the 9mm. It was a Glock 9mm, and this was shot with a Glock 40 caliber. The bullet, it doesn't matter what kind of a pistol it is. The 40 caliber out of pretty much any 40 caliber pistol is going to make a hole like this. The 9mm is going to make a hole like that. The significant thing, we said we used a tape measure a minute ago. If I just do this, the bullet would not, in the bullet that went in the deepest, it did not go farther than my finger, right? In fact, it went not as deep as my finger is long. That's a pretty powerful thing to know. Okay, in the 40 caliber, which is a bigger bullet, it didn't even go past my my second knuckle. That's how deep it went, right to there. That's powerful. Now, let's take a look at some of the books that we shot with the rifle. The rifles have a lot more power. Take a look at some of the bullets. These two bullets are from an AK-47, 7.62 by 39. It's a very powerful round. You can see that this is the casing here, has all the powder. That's the projectile up here. So this fairly large projectile has got a lot of power behind it. This one happens to be a steel core, so it's a very hard projectile that's coming out, and it offers extra penetration. The good news is that those are becoming much more rare because just not making them as much anymore. They've been bought up and shot, but that's what the bullet looked like when it passed through all those series of textbooks. So it really kept its integrity the entire time, and we'll see in a minute where it stopped. This is the more common round. It's got a lead core. That's what we much more commonly see. Still, you can see it's got a lot of power behind it, a large projectile, big piece of metal. Okay? More common. And this is what happened to that bullet when it hit the textbooks. We'll see in a second where both of them stopped. Take a look. Okay, this is the first textbook. This is how we leaned them all up, just like this. We had 6 textbooks because we wanted to see specifically where the bullet was going to stop. The first bullet, if I remember correctly, was this one. Okay, that was the steel core. You can see, went in, came out the other side. I'll show you in a second. This is the lead core. We're going to follow the track of both of these rounds. Right here we can see steel core came out. Lead core came out, no problem. Very, very fast bullet. The AK-47 round is going to be traveling upwards of 2,000 feet per second, maybe 2,400 feet per second. Whereas the pistol rounds that we were talking about before were traveling somewhere half that speed. Okay? Just to give you an idea of the speed of travel. Obviously, a piece of metal going faster is going to cause more damage. Here, steel core entered, lead core entered. Came out here, You can see this one looks to me like it's starting to slow down more than the steel core is, because it's causing more of a punch out. More stuff is starting to bulge. Okay, enter. Okay, now this is the third book. This one's already, more stuff is bulging out, meaning to me that it's slowing down even more. Here, this is the significant book, okay? This one is the fourth book. The bullet stopped down in here, in the middle of the fourth book, meaning what we've got, let's take a look at the lead core was sitting right about here. It was lodged in this area here. What that means is, let's take a measurement. The very common AK-47 round traveled through approximately 4.25 inches of pages, obviously including the binding. This one has a soft binding, the rest have hard bindings. And that means about 10 centimeters plus a little bit of material here. Okay, and that's where the round stopped. In other words, if I were to lay my hand, the bullet in that distance from my wrist to the end of my fingers, it stopped well before that. Okay, in fact, it stopped more like from the first knuckles here up to the fingertip on my middle finger, about that distance. That's how far the lead core stopped. And what's interesting to me is that the steel core didn't go much deeper. What we saw is that just the power of it really put a good hole in the fifth textbook. But when we checked it, all this was, everything we see here, is impact. It actually ripped the pages, so you can see that it really hit hard. It ripped the pages, but funny enough, it was sitting somewhere toward the back of this textbook, meaning that it penetrated an extra centimeter maybe, approximately right here. So this one is at just over 4.5 inches of penetration. Likewise, you know, this time I would say, okay, middle of my hand, extra 2 centimeters. Right, that's the distance that steel core penetrator, you know, some people call them, what do they call them? Armor piercing. That's a word that you might hear that called. Armor piercing round. Doesn't really mean much. It just means that it's going to go a little bit deeper. We can see it didn't go that much deeper. Now, take a look at the bullet that was used, the kind of weapon used in the most recent school shooting that everybody's talking about right now in Connecticut. This is the kind of bullet that was used. It's a 5.56 standard, used in the M16 combat rifle, AR-15 style rifle, M4, these kind of weapons. That's what's used in those weapons. 5.56 ammo. You can see very, very small projectile. This is the projectile. This is compared to the AK-47, but it's got more powder behind it. So it's really very, very fast round. This bullet moves upwards of 3,000 feet per second, but it's very light, so it doesn't have the same kind of penetration capabilities. We can see here, this is what the bullet looked like once we pulled it out of the book. Really lost pieces of it as it was going through, and sort of maintained a little bit of the core, but mostly the jacket is what we see here. That's what we got. So, let's take a look at how it performed inside the medium. This is the entrance. You can see a very tiny little hole. It's actually a 22 caliber hole, whereas this one's a 30 caliber hole. It's a bigger hole. for the AK-47 than it is for the 223/556. Came out here already. We see this bulge. That means to me that it's already been impacted. The speed has been impacted significantly by the book itself. It's already starting to slow down and punch a lot of material out. If it maintained its speed, it would have a nice, clean, fast-looking hole out of there. Clean little hole. Here it goes in. Again, comes out, leaving a lot more push of the material out. And it's not going to pass through the third book. Okay? Again, the pistol round was going 1,100, 1,200 feet per second. This one's going upwards of 3,000 feet per second. And because it's such a small round, it's already lost its capability in the third book. The round was somewhere in the first section of the book, somewhere in right about here. That's where we picked it up, right in here. You can see that it still caused some tears in the pages, but this is just, you know, that impact of the book being hit, tore out some pages, put an indentation, but the bullet itself stuck here. Let's take a look at the distance that we have. Less than 3 inches. On my fingers. Now if I take my, again, it's not much more than that first pistol round that we did. Actually, I think it's the same distance, funny enough. I mean, these textbooks, every textbook is going to be a bit bigger, a bit smaller, thicker, depending on how much they want to torture you in school. So that's about the distance that we saw from the 9mm round. This one didn't go so much deeper, funny enough. Much more powerful bullet, but didn't penetrate all that much deeper. Okay, and the last thing that I want to show you, we didn't really show it on the video, but here we did this, right? These books didn't get hit by anything because all the rounds stopped within the third or the fourth textbooks. So this one here, we saw the impact. That was the steel core. The impact caused that tear in the book. Now this I shot with a shotgun. I thought that would be interesting for people to see. This was with a 12-gauge slug. Now the 12-gauge slug, we see right here, big old chunk of metal in there. Massive chunk of metal. This is how it came out. To me it was very, very interesting because this is what we saw. Went in, real messy looking. Also very, very common weapon, right? A 12-gauge rifle, 12-gauge shotgun I should say. Very common. Bullet goes in, the slug goes in. That huge chunk of metal was stuck like this, impressed into the binding of the second textbook. Did not even penetrate the second textbook. Obviously caused a lot of indentation here, caused a lot of crushing of the book, but I mean that's what we saw. We had to rip this thing off of the outside of the textbook. Now we turn this around. We shot buckshot at the other side. The buckshot, let's look back over here. Buckshot is same, it's 12-gauge buckshot. We've got a whole bunch of little pellets inside of here. This is what we found inside of the book, all these little pieces of smashed up lead. That's what we got on the inside of the book. Causes a lot of mess inside of flesh. But to me what's very interesting is that with this hole we got almost zero penetration. I mean, it went in this far, it cut down to, we got everything stopped by Look at that. There's a piece of it right there. It comes out with some plastic. There's one of the little pieces right there. We're talking about, let's measure the distance. This much distance, everything had stopped. 3/4 of an inch. 2 centimeters. Basically, just over my fingernail. My thumbnail in width. That's how deep the buckshot went. Meaning, one textbook held up in front of me, that shotgun won't go through it, right? The buckshot won't go through it. The slug will go through and be significantly slowed down. As much as I can put up in front of me, anything hard that I put up in front of me will affect the power that any bullet has, that any projectile has. Whether it goes through or not, it will significantly reduce the damage caused to my body. If I could put up 2 textbooks, it's better than 1. Put up 3. The point is, if I can take my backpack and hold it up in front of my face, and my backpack has a textbook or 2 or 3, I could save my life.